Welcome to the official Windows 8 channel, and today a little discussion on Windows 8, and especially one of the questions that comes up quite often. People tell me, what's the difference between 32 or 64 bits operating systems, and why should I choose one over the other? Windows 8, like Windows 7 and Windows Vista, comes in several flavors, but it also comes in two types of operating system, which are 32-bit operating systems or 64. The 32 and 64 bits, to make it simple, defines the way the operating system can access the computer's hardware and memory and information. 64 bits means it can address, or it can look at much bigger files, much bigger information, use more memory. 32 bits is limited to a maximum of 4 gigabytes, for example, of memory. It's limited in the size of what files you can load into memory. So to overcome that file size limitation and memory limitation, they actually made a 64-bit version. Also, another feature that 32 and 64 have in difference is that in dual-core operating systems, 32-bit operating systems will usually use mostly one core, while the 64-bit versions of the operating system will usually be more useful in a multi-core system and use different threads because of the fact that it can allocate and use much bigger memory size and files. So when should you or not use 32 or 64? Depends on what you do with your computer, depends on the type of computer you're using also. The reason they give out a 32-bit version of Windows 8 is mostly to use on older machines. If you have that Pentium 4 computer at home and think of using it for Windows 8, then you'll have to use a 32-bit version. It's the only version that works on the single-core processors. And so one of the reasons they give a 32-bit is to access older hardware that is compatible only with 32-bit versions. Older software also. Some software doesn't work in 64-bit environment. So if you have that old copy of Photoshop, for example, that dates from 2002, and you really need that version for some reason, then it is quite possible that that version that was made for 32 bits might not work in 64 bits. I would say that the compatibility of 32-bit programs is close to 75-80% in the 64-bit environment, but there is that exception to the rule, that program that just doesn't work in 64-bit environment, that's gonna crash. So keep that in mind if you're using or want to use a environment of Windows 8 with older software and hardware. And basically, if you've got a new machine like this Toshiba that's not even a year old, notice that I have installed 8 gigabyte of RAM. I've got a Core i5, which is a multi-core processor. These are all features that only 64-bit operating systems can use to the maximum. So if you got 8 gigabyte of RAM on your computer, if you want to see it all and use it all, you'll have to use a 64-bit operating system, because 64 bits has more addressing space, which means that the limits of 64 bits is much higher in than 32. So you can use lots more memory, you can use very big files. If you're a Photoshop guy, for example, or you edit really big video files and you need to have it all in memory, well, you'll have to use a 64-bit operating system for that use, because it can address much more information at the same time. What's the fastest? 32, 64? Big debate with that. Actually, lots of tests are kind of showing that 64 bits is sometimes a little bit slower than 32 bits actually. But it compensates with the fact that on some programs and on some files, because it can address and use bigger files and also use multi-core more efficiently. So it depends what you're doing. If you're using some older software and older stuff, it might be slower on 64-bit actually. But if you're using state-of-the-art computers that are, you know, a year old or two, and you're using different operating systems, or especially different programs that need to access large bits of information, well, then even if it would be basically a little slower or the same, you need that to access the bigger information needed. So in reality, I don't think there's that much of a difference in speed between 64 and 32. I would say they're pretty much the same, but they don't use the same type of information. They cannot access the same information that, you know, be it 64 or 32. So the rule, you've got a really old computer, want to try out a Windows, Pentium 4, well, 32 bits. You've got a new computer, but you need to address or use really old hardware for some reason. You'll probably better off with 32 bits. Gamers is a place where it's a little mixed up. If you play a lot of older games, it might be better to have 32 bits, because lots of these older games are in 32-bit environments and might not work well in 64 bits. Yet the newest games all operate well on 64 bits because they can use bigger files to render the graphics, for example, on your screen. So new games are okay on 64 bits, but if you want to play that old version of a particular game, like Halo, for example, the first versions, it's possible that 64-bit will not make it work well, and you'll have to revert, especially because the graphics driver in 64-bit environment are made for 64 bits, so they can have difference in operation that make these games crash. It's all the questions of you know, whether you're using older games, older programs, and older stuff, or the older hardware, or if everything you use is brand new. I think that's where 32 or 64 bits will really make a difference. You use old games, old hardware, use 32 bits, probably better. You have new hardware, new computer, you only play the latest games, then a 64-bit machine is probably better because it's going to address bigger memory size, and probably make these games and these programs run better. So that's about it. If you have your own little view of what's better, 32, 64, or maybe you want to tell us what do you use and why did you choose that 32 or 64-bit, let us know. And put these little comments below the video so that we can all read of that and learn more. And if you enjoy our videos, subscribe to our channel. You'll have, of course, information when videos are online, and we try to put videos every week, so you'll know that videos have been put online if you subscribe. And maybe you have comments, questions, or maybe you have a feature of Windows 8 you'd like us to talk about. Let us know. We'll try to put that video online. And finally, If you have that new Windows 8 machine, or maybe you're planning to buy one, take a look at our videos. We have lots and lots of videos to help you use Windows 8 to the maximum. So hope you enjoy our channel and that you'll come back to the official Windows 8. Bye bye.